Welcome to this special edition of Keepin It Real, panel discussions with entrepreneurs who have shared their stories in our guest blog and join us to discuss topics trending in business. Our guests are innovators, collaborators, and small business owners who have successfully made the transition from corporate leader to business owner. Our topic is small business and community impact. Today is part 2 of 2 in the series. We will discuss the importance of connections in our communities. Do thriving businesses equal thriving communities? To help us explore the topic, I'd like to introduce you to our expert panel. Virginia Burt is a landscape architect who joins us from Dundas, Ontario. Lynn McLaughlin is an author, coach, and podcast host from Kingsville. Ryde is a human behavior and leadership coach from Burlington, Ontario. And John Williams is an author, architectural designer from Ancaster, Ontario. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us.
So I appreciate that you're all able to join me today. We've all been in business for a number of years and contribute to our communities through job creation, volunteerism, sponsorships, donations, and mentorship. And there was a time when discussing our communities meant the cities where we live and work. Now it may also include global networks. So as we begin to discuss community impact, I'd like to ask, is your community within your geographic area part of a global network or both? Virginia, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Trish. We have found that really we are both. Mm-hmm. Our work, I have an office in Cleveland as well as my office here. Our work is stretching throughout North America. We're open to going other places as well. Mm-hmm. I think that community really has been redefined by the internet. Obviously, like it is a different world that we live in, and as people either become more comfortable using that technology to help you, or they've grown up with it. I mean, this is something that I can say freely. I did not grow up with all this. However, that being said, I think that our impact, and we make and work at quite a piece in our office where we believe positive thinking, positive outcomes happen in a community as a result, and it's got a ripple effect. It's shown that one act of kindness can impact tens of thousands of people. Yes, and so I think that the key is for us, we're part of a global network. We're part of a global network that we feel the more positive things that we can do, say, and implement, we're affecting the community.
Yeah,
regardless, locally or not.
Right. Lynn, what about you?
Oh, I totally agree with Virginia. And for me, it's been just over 5 years, and I had no idea. I was in a government position, we'll call it that this world of entrepreneurs existed locally. I mean, we get together locally with writers, with local authors, with business owners, with women leaders, locally in person and in virtually. But the connectedness, at first I was actually, I'll say squirrel at the beginning, because there's so many online opportunities for networking. I mean, the Happiness Project is one. Trish, your SYS networking. And it's finding the niche of people that you connect with where you share the same vision and the same mission, and you really jive. And some of these people have become very good friends. One of the people on my advisory committee is from the United Kingdom. Right. We used to go to present and, be workshop leaders or keynote speakers at conferences in person. Now we can do it virtually.
Yeah.
So the impact absolutely is both. No question about it.
Tree, what about you?
Yeah, for us, we're very strong here in Burlington. So when we talk about local, we build a lot of communities. I'm part of, chambers, BNI groups. So one thing that brings us strength in a lot of that is the support from all the other local businesses within Burlington. With that being said, Burlington Hypnosis, We are part of the founders of the Hypnosis Training Canada, so it's Canada-wide,
Right.
which is also part of the MHS, which is Master Hypnotist Society, and that's all over North America. So we're definitely, and every location all across Canada has the same local strength as well as all of us
Global.
all over.
Yeah.
So we sort of, and it's, the big thing is support. So no matter what the location is, where the location is, there's tons of support all across, which is really refreshing
Yeah,
in a
for
huge
sure.
way. Yeah.
Now, John, you've been in business the longest of this group at 53 plus years. So I'm sure that your work has taken you both local in the community and global. So would you say you're both, or are you stronger locally than you are globally?
It's quite different now. When we started practice, we were more international. We were doing work in Texas, Boston, the Carolinas, Virginia, Florida. And it's only in the last, I'd say, 15 or 20 years, we've seemed to concentrate more into Southern Ontario. Maybe that has something to do with the old age of my body. I don't want to travel or something to that extent. But, and my driving is getting worse. So, if I'm not flying, I'm not driving. So it's so we do less work internationally now. During COVID, it was quite interesting because we had a major house to design, and the client was in Palm Springs, and so we were able to do that on the internet, which was really quite an interesting solution to the problems we were having with COVID. So
Right.
The problem with being both international and local is you tend to lose touch unless you have a office in, for instance, San Antonio, where I started out doing development years ago on River Walk. But we had an office in that area with our lawyers. And so we had a relationship with the people in the city and the jurisdictional departments. Now in Burlington and the southern area of Toronto and southern Ontario, it's a little easier to travel around and have those relationships both
Sure.
with groups.
I love Virginia's comment because quite a few of us didn't grow up with the technology piece. And, now it's a whole new world, right? I mean, delving into the opportunities that present themselves globally because we have these wonderful tools that we can speak to each other is really a wonderful way to take our businesses into a whole new dimension. So thanks for mentioning that, Virginia. Now, one of the things that we all do, and I know all of you are really active in terms of volunteerism, and I think that's a really important element that's vibrant in the community. Again, to both Tree and Lynn's and Virginia's point about when we change one thing, we help the ripple effect takes over, right? So in terms of you and your teams, how are you active in the community? Why don't we start with Tree? Because I know you have a really strong connection in your local community. What are some of the things that you and your team are doing in terms of volunteerism?
Yeah, so we support a lot of nonprofits, like charities. So we just had an event on Sunday. It was like a half yoga, half hypnosis.
Cool.
And we supported a rescue farm up in Carlisle. We're doing another one for single pregnant women. And then I also donate swag bags for this women's golf. So this amazing human, Far Samji, she does smashing golf. And so I donate just mindful things to keep your mind in the right place for golf.
Yeah.
And the great thing that what she does is it's for women and that nobody keeps score. It's all like completely humble and women supporting other women. So
Right.
So those are just a few of them. We have a whole bunch, but I really, each month I pick maybe one or two things that we're doing and stick to that so that it's expanding the awareness and overall betterment for all humans is really where our heart's at.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Virginia, you have a project actually in Burlington that you would, we could consider it to be volunteerism, where you actually have this wonderful Japanese garden there. So maybe you can share with our group a little bit about how that came to fruition.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, the Itabashi, it's called the Itabashi Garden, behind the,
Is it a community center?
Tansley Woods, behind Tansley Wood Recreational Center.
Mhm.
And, I think there's a couple of things about that garden. And the first piece is, we helped raise money for it. With our contacts, we donated money. I believe John also supported our garden, and amongst other businesses and local folks, and because we knew it was a heartfelt project, and has to do with literally, and I'm going to say it this way, reaching hands across the ocean. It truly is creating world community. It has a big fancy name, Mundalization, but it is really what it is how do we create world citizenship? Because quite frankly, that's what we are. And we, we've always strived to do that. The internet has made it possible in a new and deeper way. Now, that's one example. We also, as an office, supported, and again, we put a local garden on tour, which raised money for a church, which in turn they were giving it to, I think it was 15 different community groups that are all supporting everything from new immigrants to homeless to, they run the gambit. And
Cool.
so my whole office volunteered to do that. At the same time, while we were doing that, we were using education. So we were educating people on invasive species. We harvested out of the local stream bed and literally used a whole series of grapevines to create a series of things to connect literally landscape to people's heart. And
Cool.
everybody's like, wow, where did you get those? And one's 5 feet in diameter. Kids can actually step inside of it. It's
Sure.
so big. And what I'll just say is it's about how we engage.
Right.
And I think for people in particular, because we create physical spaces, not unlike John, but our physical spaces outside, that ability to be able to connect people to nature, actually, it not only supports them mentally, emotionally, and physically, but also spiritually.
Yeah,
and
for
that's
sure.
something that we really want to tag and hit,
Connect
that
with,
be
yeah.
holistic. Yeah.
Excellent.
And
Now
that's a beautiful spot, the Tansley Wood. I go hiking in the forest there all the time, and there's this little owl, and I always look to see if this owl is in the same spot. I've seen that garden, and it's gorgeous. Absolutely.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very kind. Thank you.
So, this is a wonderful segue to Lynn, who spent most of her her career in academia. I mean, she was working in the school system, and her business is really connecting the emotional intelligence of kids and helping kids just kind of, create a whole set of language and learning skills. So I know, Lynn, that you're doing a lot of things in terms of volunteerism in your community, and I know you're doing it not just with kids, but how would you describe your connection with the community when it comes to volunteerism?
So the person I'm co-venture with is actually my niece, and she's a social worker. And the two of us, specifically around not-for-profits, do a lot of, I'll say, volunteer work with our time, our expertise, and donations from our book series.
Right.
So, for example, in 2 weeks, I'll be going to speak with parents of kids who have learning disabilities around emotional well-being, and what does that look like, and how can they support their children, and how can they support themselves to be well? Because with the old expression that when the cup is half full. We have donated books to local organizations such as the Learning Disabilities Association, Hiatus House for Women, where families run or have a shelter, and those children have suffered through abuse. We really try to get the resources into the hands of the people that need it. Follow up where we possibly can with actually going to speak with groups or doing workshops or any of those kinds of things. So it's really our time, our expertise, and then donations of books, which the books themselves, each one teaches an evidence-based strategy that adults, grandparents, me have learned, so we can model for our kids. So And then when we go out into schools, into parent organizations in the evening, that's part of the business, but there's still the volunteer piece that goes with that.
Sure.
Reading, going into libraries, going into local bookstores, doing story
Mm-hmm.
times, all of those kinds of things have had an enormous impact. Of course, I'm a Rotarian, and that all comes around with it too. And volunteer at
Sure.
the food bank, that's more of a personal
Right.
choice as opposed to the business, though.
Right, right. Now, John, I'm sure you've got lots of examples that you can share with us, but why don't you highlight one example of volunteerism that's been important to you in your business throughout your career?
I think probably the major element that I was involved with in volunteerism has always been having to raise money for community elements such as performing arts centers, art galleries, libraries, that type of thing in the cities that we work in. I'm usually having to sit on the steering committees and things of that sort. Where I get most of my enjoyment was actually chairing historical boards over the years. I've chaired 3 in total in different cities, and that's all volunteer type work.
Right.
And the other thing we do a fair amount of is meeting and giving, how would you call it, sort of primers or primers, however you'd like to say that, on how to fix up your house, just front of your house through a lipstick program and things like that. We did that
Sure.
for a number of years for local citizens for free, that they could come into the library. We would hold these classes every Saturday or so, and people would come, and they were very popular. And of course, fortunately, that led to a lot of projects for us in the long
Sure.
run. So
Awareness, yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're all small business owners, and I know that everything that you do creates, puts yourself in a position of being a role model for other people in the community. But we all know that mentorship has been a really important piece. You know, when you've been in business for a lot of years, there's a lot of people that touch your life or your career in some way. Is there an example that you can share with someone who has had a profound effect on you and your career in the form of a mentor? That you can give a shout out to them, or maybe even just give us an indication as to how it helped you in your career. Tree, is there someone that you can think of that really helped you in terms of being a mentor in your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few. And I'll just quickly. So one was an acting coach when I was doing some acting, then brought me into really seeing other people's models of the world and into like more of a spirituality kind of faith-based sort of vibe. And then Robbie Spear Miller, whom you met recently. And
Yeah.
so she's been a mentor for me for over 12 years. So just really calls me on my crap.
Fantastic.
Calls me on my crap. Yeah. And then also Gary Leung and Scott McFall. So it's nice male, female like
Sure.
energies. So yeah, a huge. And I think it's important for all humans to have people that are really going to lead you in the direction and where you need to go, because they're seeing the bigger picture as opposed to when they're being in it, right?
Yeah. Now, one of the things that when I wrote the book Breaking Barriers, I talked about 3 different types of mentors, and of course, Virginia followed her story was one of the ones that we featured in that book. But the 3 things that we talked about in terms of mentorship was formal, informal, and inspirational. So sometimes you don't even have to meet the person, they can be in some way, shape, or form inspirational. So, John, have you had somebody in your career that you think made some sort of an impact on how you've dealt with your business over the years?
Yes, 2 specific people that were, one was a actual mentor just through working with him. And that would be the Greenberg family, who were Greenland Construction years ago in Toronto. They were a major developer. And I did a fair amount of junior work for them. Then they helped me get started in business quite nicely. So that was a huge mentor in terms of business of architecture. And then Robert Stern, who's probably about 5 years older than me, has always been a inspirational mentor to me. His company, Ramsat, in the United States, in New York City. And recently we've started doing our own work to pass our knowledge on, and that's to a number of young architects that I mentor that are coming along. I say young, they're in their 50s now. I consider that young because I'm looking at 80 down the shotgun. And so that's important, both to give and to get.
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
there's some other inspiration that you're going to have from your past in architecture. There's everything's been designed once in this world. There's nothing really new. All you're looking at is new variations of
Sure.
inspirational things. So
Yeah.
other architects are hugely inspiring to the work we do.
Excellent.
Mostly
And Virginia.
classicism. We like classic architecture.
Virginia, you've had some really wonderful experiences, I'm sure, in terms of mentorship in your career. Is there anyone that you can share with us and highlight that had a huge impact on you?
Sure. Cornelia Hahn Oberlander, and I would say, and all kidding aside, she would be the Taylor Swift of landscape architecture. Okay, folks, like everybody would know her name.
Yeah, and you even referenced her in the book as well,
Yes, I did.
as being a mentor.
Absolutely. And, Cornelia, landscape architect, and you'll appreciate this, John. Walter Gropius was the chair of Harvard Graduate School of Design when she went. But there is somebody who, and she really was a trailblazer.
Right.
And my opportunity had been that not only was she was a person, she became a personal friend, but also a professional mentor for our work, and supported me in achieving something that there are only 6 women in the world that have a fellowship in both the American Society of Landscape Architects and the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects. And I'm appreciative to say that Cornelia helped me get there.
Wow, that's really wonderful.
And so as a result, one of the things that Cornelia, who passed away, she was still working at age 99.
Wow.
And
Wow. There was no retirement plan.
No, she did not have a retirement plan. Her retirement plan was you keep going until it's done.
Right.
Anyway, she's passed away now, and delightfully so. I acknowledge her wonder, but what it has done, and I think that the part for me is it models how one transitions, and I'm going to say it this way, from being somebody who's coming up to somebody who's there. And I think for me, you sort of think, oh, I'm still coming up, and but at the same time, what you realize is you're really there. And as being there, then it is being sure that you pass along the lessons learned, the items, So as a result, I have, I think I have 6 people who I mentor all the time. And those range from 50-year-olds to 23-year-olds. Okay, so,
Great.
and and they're all landscape architects. And they're all saying, like, what is it that sets us apart, and how do we do it? And I get to speak to them about that.
Right.
And
right.
it is
That's
truly, in my opinion, it is literally it's something. It's a chalice. It's something to cherish.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's a sacred trust that you're having with people, because they're being vulnerable with you, and you're being vulnerable back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is when we have meaningful clarity.
Oh, I love that word. I love the fact that you've raised the fact that, we are vulnerable with our mentors, because we're exposing perhaps the things that we're trying to learn to those people, right? We're asking them for help and guidance, and, to give us the knowledge. So I really love that you referenced that word. Now, Lynn, I'm sure in the education system prior to being, taking the leap into entrepreneurship, there were lots of folks that you helped to mentor in addition to mentoring you. But is there anyone in your career that you can think sort of put you on the path to where you are now?
I'm going to jump to the entrepreneurship because I could take another hour talking about all the
Right, for
mentors
the
and
education.
but
Yeah.
Right.
when I jumped out, I mean, Trish, you certainly one, I didn't find you for a year, helping me really hone in on my what and my why and my who and my audience. But I think I want to focus based because of what Virginia just said about, I can see the cycle now of mentorship around writing and publishing.
Mhm.
And Cheryl was an amazing influencer for me. Back when I wrote my first book, taking me through every single stage, like, oh my God, laboriously through the process.
Yeah.
And I'm in a position now. Last week I emceed a book launch for an amazing person locally, Rita Michelli, her first book. She's been working on it for 4 years and helping people now grapple with, I have an idea. Only 3% of us actually publish. We have that idea, right?
Yeah.
How do we get from the idea through to choosing the publishing path? What's the publishing path? And then that book launch, and what does it look like? So that's what I'm focusing a lot of my time with mentorship now, as I, continue to write myself. And so I see that cycle going around and around and around.
Yeah.
But in terms of the social emotional learning, I have to say Margaret Boersma has really helped me stay focused on what that really means for myself and my business partner, as opposed to being pulled in so many different directions, which happens to too many of us.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
we just have to keep our focus in mind. So
That actually brings me to a really interesting question. And that is, we all know that we have a budget, we're running a business. And although we're making these huge contributions to our community in terms of time and money, there are some considerations when folks come forward and ask us to be a sponsor or provide some volunteer time. And that's always a consideration, I'm sure. So in marketing budgets and time, if they're a consideration, can you share one thing that impacts your decision when a community group asks for your support? Because there's lots of community groups that come forward. So is there one particular criteria that you can share with our viewing and listening audience that comes to mind that you would use when you're making a decision to either donate time or money? John, can you provide just one criteria that you would consider?
I would say the main criteria I would consider is community elements.
Right.
That's one nice
How
way
it's
of
going to
saying
benefit the community.
it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tree, what about you? Is there one particular element that comes to mind that you specifically zone in on when you're making your decisions about which type of organization you want to support?
Absolutely. So especially if it's time, I need to be interested in it. It has to be my jam, and it has to be fun. Like it has to
Oh,
be
I love that.
like,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, like the rescue farm, I'm up there all the time, and it's just so beautiful, and
Right.
being around the animals. So it's a true passion. So when it's time, if it's money, I agree with John, like in terms of community and the impact.
Sure.
But if it's me time, then definitely has to be
Has
fun.
to be fun. Oh, I love that. I love that. Lynn, what about you? Is there one element?
it's mission and vision. Is it
Yeah.
around being proactive and doing things strategically before kids struggle?
Right.
And if it falls in line with that, then we're absolutely looking at it.
And what about you, Virginia?
I think for us, it really is a win-win. That's what we're always looking for, is our contribution, and regardless of whether it's time or money for us. And it
Right.
really is a piece about alignment and creating that win-win with their mission, vision. I think that is key,
Right.
because there are many places, to be sure, that need our help.
Absolutely.
And so we just want to work through and make sure that it's an alignment of our heart-filled joy. Just
Perfect.
to be able to deal with that.
Almost like with Tree and the fun. I love that. I like the fun idea. Now, as we wrap up our discussion today, I'd like to ask you to share one word with our viewing and listening audience that would describe your connection with the community. And I'm going to start with Tree and ask Tree, what would be your one word? If you had to provide us with a word that would describe your connection with the community, what would it be?
Yeah. So when I read that in the question, and it came to me just like that, and my word is love. All the way.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
100%.
Virginia, what would be your word?
Harbor.
Oh, like that word. That's really
Okay, so
good.
for us, it's that
a big
piece
hug.
of creating harbor. We
Yeah.
live in a harbor. It is we're a safe place, as a business, and we want to continue to be able to do that in the world as well.
Excellent. John, what would be your word if you had to use one word?
Probably romance. The houses we do, we try to make them as romantic visually as we possibly can,
Right.
As opposed to a particular style, and with the hopes that the people that move into our houses will love coming home.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Lynn, what would be your word?
It's empowering. I had reciprocal first too, because what you put out, you get such joy from. So when I think about
Right.
reciprocal, it's not like didn't want it to be my business is getting something back. It's what it brings to you as a human, as a person to
Yeah.
give and to feel that joy and that love. So when I say reciprocal, I'm going to stick with reciprocal.
Perfect. You know what I have to say, that when we began the discussion, the real question was, are thriving businesses giving us thriving communities? And I think that based on the examples that you've all shared, we can probably answer that question with yes, because each and every one of you are making contributions, not only as role models and mentors, but supporting the communities in which you live and work in order for them to be thriving for everyone that touches your life. So that's a really wonderful thing. And I think that this is an awareness piece. Our conversation is going to make people aware that small businesses in our communities are an integral part of the thriving areas in which we live. And I think that that's so important. So I'd really like to thank all of you for sharing your comments and your experiences and just the philosophies that you have about your businesses. Does anyone want to share any parting words before we sort of wrap up everything today? It's really been an honor to hear some of those things that you do. Tree, would you like to share a comment?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that as you're talking about us in small businesses, and that we're all fairly local, close, but we also have this massive outreach.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we're all somewhat local, but we've never really crossed paths. Like, of course,
True.
we all know you, but it's like 6 degrees of separation. So it's cool, and it warms my heart to know that there's all these small businesses that are creating community, are being more expansive and spreading what needs to be spread right now in society.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I love the piece that if there was any connection that I could make to all of you and what you've shared, it's the human element. We're all trying to make a positive contribution to humanity. And I think that that's a really important thing as a takeaway. So I'd like to thank Virginia, Lynn, Tree, and John for sharing your stories and point of view with our viewing and listening audience. We certainly appreciate your contributions as business owners and wish you all continued success as you lead by example and leave an impact in your communities. I'm Trish Tonai, founder and host for the series. And if you're interested in sharing your business story, visit our website at shareyourstories.online. And if you'd like to connect with one of our panel guests, you'll find their story and contact information in the description portion below. In the meantime, I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channel. And I'd like to thank you for joining us as we look forward to meeting you next time with another episode of Keeping It Real. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Honor and pleasure.